The evening sun was slowly sinking behind the pond. The disciple walked in silence, right by the Buddha's side. The only sounds were the chirping of insects, the wind, and their quiet footsteps. After a long while, the disciple carefully spoke. Buddha, lately sexual desire keeps rising within me. Even when I try to suppress it, it won't disappear, and when I try to ignore it, it just comes back. It calms down for a moment, but when I'm alone at night, those feelings flood over me again. Why is this desire so endless? Why do I feel so empty no matter what I do? The Buddha stopped walking without a word. He looked at the glow of the sunset over the pond for a moment, and then slowly began to speak. Desire doesn't come to fill you. It comes to empty you even more. That's the true nature of emptiness. Think of it like scrolling through a social media feed. At first, you're just curious, looking at pictures and videos. But soon, you find yourself compulsively scrolling, looking for a thrill. You click from one post to the next, hoping for a feeling of excitement or connection. But after an hour, you feel more restless and empty than before. The more you scroll, the more you're looking for that next hit of dopamine, and the less fulfilled you become. This isn't just about sexual desire. It's the same feeling when we overeat, go on an online shopping spree, or binge watch a series. We think we're filling a void, but we're only making it bigger. The Buddha then shared a story from a long time ago. There was a young man. On the surface, he was capable and got along well with people. But his nights were different. After he went home and closed his door, he was consumed by provocative things. At first, it was simple curiosity, but as time went on, stronger stimulation called for even more. Eventually, he couldn't be satisfied by anything. He gradually developed different faces for day and night. In front of people, he smiled, but when he was alone, he was seized by a sense of futility, blaming and hating himself. One day, he came to me and said, "Buddha, I feel empty no matter what I do. Where does this feeling come from?" I quietly told him, "You think you're drinking water, but in fact, you're drinking seawater. The more you drink, the thirstier you become." He didn't understand for a moment. So I asked again, "What do you want to fill right now?" He couldn't answer. That's because what he was trying to fill wasn't desire, but something to cover up his own worthlessness. Desire is the disguise of loneliness. When you don't feel that you are valuable, you try to wrap that emptiness in the package of pleasure. But pleasure is not comfort. Rather, it only proves how much lonelier you are. Think of the person who buys a luxury car to feel a sense of worth, or the one who constantly seeks validation through likes on social media. They're not truly looking for a car or a post that goes viral. They're looking for proof of their own value. They're trying to cover up a deep feeling of not being enough. But just like with sexual desire, that pleasure doesn't last. The new car loses its shine, and the likes fade away. The emptiness returns, often even more pronounced than before, because the chase only reinforces the feeling that we are fundamentally lacking. Desire approaches sweetly at first, but in the end, it makes you feel more empty. It's not something to be filled, but something to be faced. My friend, the emptiness you feel now didn't come from a lack of desire, but because you couldn't look at yourself as you are. True emptiness doesn't come from the body. It comes when you lose yourself. The first step is to recognize that fact. That is the first enlightenment. The disciple lowered his head and took a deep breath in silence. He then slowly looked at his own reflection in the pond, gazing at himself for the very first time. The disciple quietly sat by the pond, placing his hands on his knees, and asked the Buddha again, "Buddha, after hearing your words, I think I can finally understand that this feeling of desire isn't just a simple craving, but comes from a deep sense of emptiness in my heart. But the moment that feeling rises, it feels like it is me. I start to believe that the desire is me, and that feeling seems to control me completely. Buddha, if that desire isn't me, then what is my true mind?" The Buddha quietly looked at the disciple's face and slowly continued to speak. Desire is like the wind passing through your mind. Your mind is like a clear, still pond. Desire is just a leaf that lands on the surface. It may cause a few ripples, and it may float there for a while, but it is not the pond itself. The leaf is a temporary visitor. The pond is the endless, unchanging space beneath it all. The problem isn't the leaf. The problem is when we mistake the leaf for the pond and believe we are nothing more than a passing emotion. Desire always acts like you. but in fact, it's just your shadow. It may look like you, and it may act like you, but a shadow is nothing more than the absence of light. It is separate from who you are. The Buddha turned his head and looked at the village far down the mountain, and he shared a story from a long time ago. There was a man. He was a father of two and a diligent worker. He always worked for his family, helped them get ready in the morning, and came home late at night to eat his dinner quietly. On the surface, he seemed ordinary, but inside his heart was a fatigue and loneliness that had been building up for a long time. His wife was exhausted, his conversations with his children had diminished as they grew older, and at work, he was just repeating the same tasks like a machine. Then one day, late at night, he was looking at his smartphone alone and started watching explicit videos. At first, it was just curiosity, but it quickly became an addictive habit, and he started searching for more and more stimulation. He started sleeping later, waking up tired, and talking less with his family. One day, he suddenly looked in the mirror and asked himself, "Is this the real me? Why do I keep doing this?" He tried to pull himself together and stop, but strangely, the more he tried, the greater the emptiness that flooded over him. He felt ashamed of himself and started to despair, thinking he couldn't overcome this feeling. Finally, one day, he found a temple, and he quietly asked me, "Buddha, if I am a person who has these kinds of feelings, then a spiritual practice must not be for me." I quietly looked at him and said, "Desire is not your mind. Your mind is the stillness that remains after that desire has passed. If your mind were truly yours, it wouldn't change. But don't you make a resolve in the morning and then waver in the evening? That means that feeling is only a temporary guest, and your essence is hidden in the quiet space where the wind has passed." The man shed tears. He thought he was a being of desire, but in fact, he had been fighting with a shadow created by loneliness for a long time. My friend, desire can shake you, but it can't define you. Look at how your mind awakens again after desire has passed. The leaf that still trembles after the wind has disappeared is not the wind, but a habit. Habits can be corrected, but your mind is already quietly awake beneath them, so return to that place. After the Buddha's words ended, the disciple quietly closed his eyes. And for the first time, he was able to clearly feel something warm and calm that still remained within him. The disciple quietly lowered his gaze and said to the Buddha, "Buddha, I used to believe that when I liked someone, it was love. I thought that the feeling of not being able to sleep thinking of them, wanting to see them, to be with them, and to be physically close was love. But only after the relationship ended did I realize something. What I loved wasn't the person, it was the intense sexual attraction I felt through them. That feeling wasn't love. It was my inner desire putting clothes on that person. Buddha, why do we mistake sexual attraction for love?" The Buddha quietly nodded and began to speak. Sexual attraction comes with the face of love. But beneath that face, it hides impulse, obsession, and anxiety. True love looks at the other person just as they are, but sexual attraction tries to turn the other person into a tool for your own desires. Love is a feeling that blesses the other person's freedom, even if they are free. Consider two friends. One friend feels a rush of excitement when the other friend texts them immediately. They feel anxious and worried if they don't get a quick response, thinking, "What did I do wrong? Do they not like me anymore?" That feeling is based on fear and a desire to possess the friend's attention. Now think about the second friend who feels genuine joy for the other when they succeed at something, getting a promotion, running a marathon, or finding true happiness, even when it has nothing to do with them. That is the feeling of love. It's selfless. It's a quiet happiness that wants the best for the other person, with no expectation in return. Sexual attraction is the emotion of being afraid and anxious that their freedom might not be yours. My friend, many people package sexual attraction in the name of love. But if that feeling can't see the other person and is only obsessed with your own desire, then it's not love. Love isn't an emotion that focuses on you. It's a quiet joy of being able to exist with the other person. So whenever you feel an emotion, ask yourself, do I love this person? Or am I trying to solve my inner desire through this person? If you can be honest with that question, then and only then does true love and true peace begin. The disciple closed his eyes for a moment, recalling each of the relationships he had been through. And a feeling of both regret and a little warm understanding began to blossom in his heart. The disciple sat in silence for a long time with his eyes closed, and then he opened his mouth to the Buddha again. Buddha, I now wish that this feeling of sexual desire would just disappear completely. I think I could be a little freer without this feeling. The effort to escape desire, the guilt after I fall, and the fight that repeats endlessly. I'm so tired of it now. Buddha, can this feeling truly be eliminated? The Buddha did not say anything for a while. He simply listened to the sound of the wind, taking a breath just like nature. Then he slowly began to speak. This feeling of sexual urge isn't an emotion to be eliminated, but an emotion to be understood. Think of a physical trainer. When a client comes to them wanting to get stronger, the trainer doesn't tell them to fight their muscles or destroy the pain. Instead, they tell them to feel the muscles as they work, to listen to their body's limits, to observe the burn. It's only by understanding and observing that you can grow stronger. The same is true for your mind. You don't get stronger by fighting your emotions. You get stronger by quietly observing them. You're not fighting to get rid of the feelings. You are practicing to be the space in which they can come and go. It isn't bad or shameful. It's a natural flow for the continuation of life, and it's the most instinctive power in all living beings. The problem isn't the desire itself, but whether that desire drags you along where you can calmly observe it. The Buddha then shared a story about an old practitioner. A practitioner came to me when he was young. He said, Buddha, even though I become a monk, sexual desire keeps rising. When I have that feeling, I feel ashamed and feel like I'm not a person who can handle this practice. I asked him, how do you deal with sexual desire? He said, I suppress it. Every time it rises, I remind myself that I am a practitioner and push that feeling away. I shook my head and said, if you suppress it, that feeling won't disappear. It will just hide, and one day, it will come at you even more strongly and secretly. Sexual desire is not something to be suppressed. It's an emotion to be understood, observed, and allowed to flow naturally. When that desire rises, look at the movement of that feeling just as it is. Calmly observe how your heart reacts, how your breathing changes, and where your thoughts flow. Then desire will no longer be a wave that shakes you, but a ripple that passes by you. My friend, sexual desire can't be eliminated, but there is a way to not be controlled by it. It's the path of observation and understanding, not suppression. Don't be ashamed and don't be afraid. Just accept that feeling as it is, and don't be swayed by it. Desire is not a bad thing. It's the mind that gets caught up in it that makes you suffer. The disciple closed his eyes and slowly exhaled. He quietly reflected on how many days he had pushed himself to get rid of that feeling. The disciple quietly put his hands together and said in a small voice, Buddha, the most difficult moment for me when I'm swept up in desire is that other people seem perfectly fine. The people I practice with, my colleagues, and even my friends seem fine on the outside. Only I am constantly wavering, falling down, and suffering from guilt alone. Buddha, why am I so weak? Why do I feel so inadequate? The Buddha quietly looked into the disciple's eyes and gently said, comparison clouds the eyes of the mind. What you're seeing now is the outward appearance of others, not what's in their minds. Some people seem strong on the outside, but there's deep pain within them. Some people smile without a word, but they're going through hundreds of moments of wavering on the inside. The Buddha then shared a story of a young man. There was a young man. He was young, brilliant, and on the surface, he was more diligent and disciplined than anyone else. He was called a role model of self-control and was always praised. But one day, he came to me. He lowered his head and silently wept, then quietly opened his mouth. Buddha, I fight with myself every night. I collapse to desire, then I hate myself, and I've repeated this for years. But people still call me a symbol of self-control. I told him, even the people who believe you're disciplined are living by deceiving themselves. You are honestly facing your own struggle, and that is already the first step toward enlightenment. My friend, everyone wavers. The only difference is whether they face that wavering honestly or hide from it. You are now blaming yourself, but in fact, you are on a more truthful path than anyone else. Don't compare. Every mind has its own waves, and no one can know the depth of that stillness from the outside. What's important is that you keep trying to come back even within those waves. That's what practice is, what growth is, and the path to liberation. The disciple slowly exhaled, and for the first time, He was deeply accepting that his wavering was also a truthful step on the path. The disciple raised his head and looked at the Buddha, asking with a trembling voice, "Buddha, this is a shameful question, but I have to ask. Can a person with this kind of sexual desire truly practice? Since I was young, I was taught that a practitioner should have no desire, and that desire should be treated like a sin. But I am still swayed by desire and easily swept up by sexual stimulation. Can a person like me follow your path? Can you tell me that a person like me is okay?" The Buddha quietly listened, then gently nodded. Practice isn't a path taken by those who have no desire. It's a path taken by those who try to overcome desire. It's not that you're unqualified to practice because you have sexual desire. If you're truly suffering while observing that desire, you are already a practitioner. The Buddha then shared a story about a monk from a long time ago. He had become a monk when he was young, but he couldn't completely cut ties with the secular world and would often think of his old lover. At night, his mind would waver. He couldn't tell anyone about this and lived in suffering for a long time. Eventually, he couldn't bear it and came to me saying, "Buddha, I am not a person suited for practice. My body is at the temple, but my mind is still wandering in desire. Should a person like me give up?" I quietly told him, "The fact that you harbor desire isn't a hindrance to practice. The very fact that you feel shame about that desire and want to speak honestly about it has already opened the door to practice. Desire is a human instinct. Don't deny yourself for having desire. Cherish the mind that wants to live faithfully while observing that desire. The real problem isn't desire, but the dishonesty of trying to hide and ignore it. My friend, you are okay. If you are as honest as you are now, and keep trying to return even while you waver, you are already on the Buddha's path." The disciple closed his eyes and placed both hands on his chest. And for the first time, he was accepting his wavering not as a sin, but as part of the path. The disciple quietly looked at the Buddha and spoke, "Buddha, as I walk this path, I sometimes hope that I can be completely free from this feeling of sexual desire one day. But I'm also afraid. What if I can never escape this feeling and have to live my whole life in this conflict? Buddha, will a day truly come when I am completely free from this desire?" The Buddha looked at the disciple's eyes and spoke in a very gentle voice. Being free from desire doesn't mean the feeling disappears. It means not being swayed by that feeling. It's not that desire stops coming to you, but that you become able to calmly observe it. The Buddha then shared a story about a certain practitioner. There was a practitioner. When he was young, he was greatly influenced by sexual desire and suffered a lot during his training. But he didn't try to suppress that feeling. Instead, every time that feeling rose, he observed his own mind, examined the cause, and calmly watched how it disappeared. He would say, "Desire is a guest that comes to me. When this guest comes, I just quietly open the door and wait for him to enter, stay, and naturally leave." As time passed, he became less and less controlled by that feeling, and finally, one day, he felt that the feeling no longer overwhelmed him but quietly passed by his side. He described that moment by saying, "I no longer try to get rid of desire. I can now be at peace with it." My friend, desire won't disappear, but you are free when that desire is no longer a source of fear. When you can watch that feeling without trying to suppress it or being dragged by it, just accepting it as part of yourself, then you are truly free. Liberation isn't a state of having no feelings. It's a state where feelings can't sway you. The disciple closed his eyes and slowly composed his breathing. And suddenly, even the feelings that had tormented him now felt like a guest who would just stay for a while and then leave. The disciple sat in silence for a long time and finally asked his last question. "Buddha, I know now that by only trying to eliminate this feeling, I fall into a deeper thirst. The more I suppressed it, the more it became a problem. The more I tried to run away from it, the more it followed me. I am gradually accepting that I must live with this feeling. So if I don't try to eliminate sexual desire and instead live with it, what does that life look like? What does it mean to live peacefully with desire?" The Buddha smiled quietly and slowly nodded. To live peacefully with desire means not being afraid of it. And even if it arises, it means not getting lost in it and not letting it cloud your awareness of yourself. Just as a raindrop that falls on a pond makes ripples for a moment, but then the pond becomes calm again, desire stays for a moment and then disappears. The Buddha then told a story of an old man. There was an old man. When he was young, he had experienced a lot of suffering and failure because of sexual desire. He belatedly realized that the feelings he had believed were love were actually desire, and he slowly came to understand that his life had been a continuous sequence of stimulation. But he didn't deny any of it. He said, "I'm not ashamed of my past. Because of those times, I have become who I am today. Desire almost broke me, but thanks to it, I was able to look back at myself." He would begin his day under a tree, breathe with the sound of the wind, and when desire came, he would just nod his head and return to his breath. He remained peaceful and silent until the very end, and people called him the quietest man. My friend, don't try to defeat desire. Instead, look at the mind that created that desire with warmth. When that feeling rises, don't blame it and don't try to hide it. Just tell yourself, it's okay. This feeling will pass too. And then return to your breathing and stay in this present moment. If you live quietly, breathing with desire every day like that, someday even that feeling will not bother you. The disciple lowered his head and quietly inhaled. And for the first time, he was warmly feeling that even his sexual desire could be accepted as a part of his life. And he quietly whispered to himself, "This feeling too shall eventually pass."